All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Unplugged Alpha. This is a very interesting one because I had a whole bunch of studies and reports summarized here for fertility rates, specifically when it comes to what's going on in the West right now. One of my contractors brought this to my attention with a bunch of links, so I've summarized them all, and I want to share what I've learned now. It's not going to be a massive surprise, but I think there's some data here that's pretty interesting when it comes to how the different waves of feminism have sort of changed the landscape, and more specifically the fertility rates and how it's affected relationships. Let me just share a quick map here. It's kind of a heat map on my screen, which is global total fertility rates. And I'll get to some of the data in the reports. And by the way, it's all linked in a Google Drive document below in the description on YouTube. So if you want to go and read all of these for yourself, you can do that. But I'm going to summarize all of them for you. This is something you may have seen before. It's somewhat of a heat map. The bluer the country is, the lower the birth rate. And the redder it is, the higher the birth rate, obviously. So when you get into the African continent, Chad, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Mali, Somalia, all of these little countries have really, really high birth rates, like 6 and higher. Afghanistan, Pakistan sort of gets into like 4.5 kids. Yemen's got a very high birth rate. And then as you sort of move into Europe here, you can see countries like Spain are sitting at 0.6 to 0.7. For reference, you need a 2.1 birth rate in the country to replace those that live there, which kind of explains why many modern Western countries are replacing its population with immigration. We'll talk about some prescriptions towards the end, because I've had this conversation many, many times before, but it's worth touching on again in this video. And I'll tell you what some of my solutions would be to sort of solve this problem. You're not going to like them, or some people won't like them, I don't think, but sometimes, the truth is cold and hard, and, that's just the way that it is. Over in Europe, Ukraine has a 0.8 birth rate. Poland is very interesting that Poland and Ukraine is both very low. Romania is quite low. Italy is quite low. You come up into the northern region, Finland's very low as well. China, of course, because of its one-child policy, is quite blue. And then you come into North American continent, Canada is just a joke. And that's why we have such a huge immigration situation going on right now. But I think what you'll notice is the more feminist a country is, with the exception of China, because of their one-child policy at one point, the bluer the country is, the more it embraces the notion of toxic feminism. It's interesting that correlation exists. Same thing with Australia, New Zealand, parts of Asia. Let me just hover my cursor over it. It's not going to show on your screen, but I can see it on my other screen over here. We got Thailand, which is very low. What is this? Down over here. Singapore is exceptionally low. Taiwan, exceptionally low. South Korea is like brutal. It's like one of the worst on the entire map, but you get the idea. That's what's going on our beautiful little blue planet, I guess. So the notion of the debates around falling fertility rates has been studied by a whole bunch of people. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different windows open over here, and I got a few other points I'm going to share with you as well, but they're all drawing pretty much the same conclusion. So I'm not going to bother putting it up on the screen because the font's not going to read right. So I'm just going to read it out to you over here. So key points, and again, you can find all of these in the description below. If you want to click that Google document, you'll find everything over there. So key points summarized in the article titled "The Debate Over Falling Fertility" by David Bloom and Michael Kuhn, published in Finance and Development magazine in 2025, examines a global decline in fertility rates and weighs whether the resulting population slowdown poses a threat. I mean, it's clearly a threat if you're not replacing the domestic population with domestic population, but with immigration. Key points. Global fertility has fallen sharply to about 5 children per woman in 1950 to 2.24 today. The only reason why that average exists, 2.24, is because you get places like in Africa or parts of the Middle East or parts of Asia, for example, where you get really high fertility rates. But again, in Western countries where the indoctrination of toxic feminist type of values has infiltrated, culture, you see the rates like well below 2, in many cases like well below 1, like in places like Spain, for example. Anyway, 2050. So they're basically saying that the global population rate will drop below 2.1 in the next 30 years. The world population may peak at around 10.3 billion in the 2080s before declining. So we're still on the incline, but we're going to definitely take a sharp decline after a few decades rounds. Declines are occurring in every major region of income group except parts of Africa where rates remain higher, and the continent's global share is expected to rise from 19% in 2025 to 26% by 2050. So Africa is going to be pumping out most of the children. Over the next 25 years, 38 countries with populations over 1 million are projected to shrink, up from 21 in the prior period. So 38 countries are going to shrink. Wow. And the largest absolute drops in China, Japan, Russia, Italy, Ukraine, and South Korea. The article presents a balanced debate. Concerns: fewer births could lead to economic stagnation via reduced workers, innovators, and idea generation, citing research on low fertility, strangling innovation. Some of the optimistic side benefits, what are they saying there? Lower fertility can free resources from housing, childcare, for investment in education. You know what's interesting? I was talking to a couple of buddies of mine that run a lot of doors. Like, I'm not talking like they have a couple of fourplexes or 100 doors, but they have like thousands of doors. And I was asking them about the drop in fertility rate, or the projected drops in fertility rates that are going to start to lower the Western population rates. And they're starting to think about getting out of the real estate business. Not right now, immediately in the next 10 or 20 years, but they're looking at by 2030, by 2040, by 2040 more specifically, I think was like the average number, that they're expected to sort of start finding other asset classes to stash fat stacks of cash in, if you know what I'm saying. Policy responses to pronatal. Okay, let's get to the summary over here on how feminism affects all this. The article itself does not explicitly blame feminism or directly discuss it as a cause. It mentions women's increased labor force participation as a positive mechanism linked to lower fertility. Declining fertility has historically driven higher female workforce entry. Yeah, like the whole getting women into the workforce after Second World War. Like after the Second World War, all the guys went off to fight the bad guys. And they needed to make tanks and planes and, shells and artillery and all that kind of stuff. So they brought women into the factories and the workforce. And they kind of never went home. The government just figured out, well, if we keep them here paying taxes and keep them employed, we actually have broader control over the economy and the household. See, that was a big shift that happened. Was we went from a patriarchal sort of like male-led household to a state-led household after the Second World War, right? Kind of when we got into these versions of like these different waves of feminism sort of thing. And we've never really gone back. It's just kind of like leaned further and further into what's essentially become the dumbest thing ever. And I'll use some examples to sort of exemplify that in a little bit. Let's see here, broader demographic, wider evidence. Women's empowerment, including education, economic autonomy, and reproductive rights, consistently correlates with lower fertility, longer birth intervals, and fewer unattended pregnancies. And there's also the notion that like there's more abortions than there have been at any other time in history. Like women just love killing babies. It's like it's almost like a national pastime, especially in certain cultures. But it's like, moving women in the workforce, taking them out of the household, separating the men and the women, having women pay taxes as men pay taxes, allowing the state to be at the head of the household in that sense of regard, and then also giving women like free reign practically to as many abortions as they want. You can see why we're running into problems here. In many developed countries with strong feminist influences, high gender equality in Scandinavia or the US as an example, fertility has fallen below replacement. partly because women gain control over reproduction and face trade-offs between career and family. Yeah, one of the worst things we did was, convince the gals to go into the workforce. And it's like, I have a meme somewhere of like cubicles, and it's like the caption says something along the lines of women fought tooth and nail to be here in like this space, sitting in a cubicle. Just doesn't make any sense. However, some analysis suggests the relationship isn't purely negative. Greater gender equality, in brackets, supportive policies for working parents can eventually stabilize or even slightly boost fertility by reducing costs of children for women. The article's optimism about adaptation aligns with this, as policies enabling female participation could mitigate downsides without reversing declines. You know what, man? I just don't see that. This piece avoids culture war framing on evidence-based policy response. Yeah, of course. Listen, guys, before I continue on here, the podcast, it's just something that I'm building on the original book. This is the second book. It's just been released a couple months ago. Top Shelf Man is available on audio on Amazon. I am in the midst of finalizing the audio recordings. That'll be out probably in about a month or so, once my editor gets them all. But you're going to have the audio book very soon too. Top left of your screen, there's a QR code. You can scan that with your phone if you're watching this on a computer, obviously, and take a look at my communities. We'll get more into that in the mid-roll ad. And of course, if you're new to the channel, you want to get on my email list, and you'll get the chapters from my book on the red flags and green flags. Let me go to the next article over here. So the next one here is titled Women's Job Opportunities and Marriage Quality. Summarized how feminism affected it. The report discusses feminist movements or activism, but its findings strongly align with feminist principles by highlighting women's empowerment through economic independence. Yeah. Women's empowerment through economic independence, because they don't need no man, right? If they go in the workforce and they have their own job, nobody thought this through. Women are hypergamous. They want to be with a giant. They want to be with a better man. They want to look up to a guy that's a winner. But then you go and force them to get degrees and go into the workforce, and it's like there's fewer of those guys around. It forces them to compete harder for them. And at the end of the day, I don't know a lot of guys that like get up in the morning and go, can't wait to find a boss girl to tell me what to do when I come home from work and ruin my shit, right? That's just not how things work. Nobody really thought this through. It's like, the grand Kabbalah that figured, let's put women in the workforce and tax them and we'll run the household sort of thing. It's a horrible experiment, man. It's just not working out too hot, is it? Economic independence. In India, where patriarchal norms often give families, especially parents, control over marriages, better job opportunities act as a feminist-like force. They raise women's outside options, like staying single or working, allowing them to challenge gender roles, reject unequal matches, big age gaps, or moving to distant in-laws, and demand more autonomy. This supports core feminist ideas of reducing power imbalances between men and women, promoting equality in relationships, and improving women's agency without needing prior employment. Essentially, the economic shift studies here indirectly advance feminist goals. UC Berkeley. We got another one over here. Again, these are all linked in the description below, guys. This one is titled Changing Gender Norms and Marriage Dynamics in the United States. So this is specific to the US. The study examines how shifts towards egalitarian gender norms in the US have influenced women's marriage formation and divorce rates from 1968 to 2012. Authorized by Lee Pessan and published by the Journal of Marriage and Family in 2018. It draws on the gender revolution framework. This theory describes two phases: an initial period of family instability as women's public roles advance, while private roles remain traditional, followed by greater stability as egalitarian norms become dominant. Gender social studies. Study analyzed 12,000 women for marriage formation and 8,000 women for divorce. Key controls include education, race, children, and okay, so this is interesting. Main findings for marriage formation. Overall, a higher prevalence of egalitarian norms is associated with a decline in marriage rates. Shocking, right? Women don't need no man, right? This decline, and then the government wonders, hey, why do we have a declining birth rate, guys? The decline holds for women without a college degree, reflecting barriers like economic inequality and lack of supportive policies. For college-educated women, this relationship is U-shaped. Marriage rates initially drop, but then increase as egalitarianism strengthens. Quadrant section suggests they benefit from norm shifts and enable stable dual. Yeah. Okay, now they move on to divorce. The relationship follows an inverted U shape. Divorce rates rise initially as norms shift from traditional, but decrease once egalitarianism prevails. I mean, look, when women start making money and then they get married and they realize that family law will punish them, it's interesting because I made a video about this on the Entrepreneurs and Cars channel relative to this stuff over here, which came out in a different video that I summarized. But essentially, most guys want to keep their wives at home, stay-at-home moms. But in family law, these women are more likely to divorce you than the woman that goes to work. And they don't have an explanation why, but I'll tell you why. Because when you're a woman staying at home, raising the kids, and then at some point the kids aren't around for you to raise, they've gone off to school, they're in school, you know, they can dress themselves, they can bathe themselves sort of thing. And they start filling their time with other shit, usually hanging around other bimbo women that tell them, you know, what to do. Because there's usually a consensus. Like there's usually groupthink when it comes to stuff like this. And then they get the cool idea that it's, you know, wise to untie the knot and get divorced because they can get half of his shit, not put up with his dumb ass either. But when a woman goes into the workforce and isn't a stay-at-home mom, and they do well, as they tend to do, and they get promoted and they make more money, then they don't want to get divorced because they know that family law is against them at that point, especially if they've surpassed their spouse, if they've done better than their spouse. So I could see that. But they don't talk about those reasons here, of course, because nobody contemplates those things. It's only I that figure these things out. No significant differences by educated level, indicating the norm shift affects divorce similarly across. Okay, study highlights. Let's go down to the feminist part, how that affects that in the summary. Let's see what they said here. Feminism, particularly second wave and subsequent movements since the 1960s, has been a primary driver of the egalitarian gender norm shifts analyzed in the article by advocating for women's economic independence, equal workforce participation, and challenges to traditional family roles, men as sole providers and women as primary caregivers. You see them try to flip that. They used to make movies back in the 80s and 90s like Mr. Mom and stuff like that. Never really worked out. Women don't want a stay-at-home dad and they go off into the workforce. They fucking hate that shit. Feminism has accelerated the gender revolution framework at the core of the study. This is evident in the data where attitudes towards working mothers and shared responsibilities evolve, reflecting feminist influences, public policy, education, and cultural narratives. We'll get into some of those details in a little bit. I got some other clips for that too. Positively, is it positively with feminism? Contributes to the second phase of the revolution as egalitarian norms dominate. It enables more stable partnerships for college-educated women. Partnerships. Fucking hate that word. They still run it. Hey. Who can leverage higher education and career opportunities to form equitable marriages. Women don't want equitable marriages. Why? All of these people with their degrees and their studies, and they haven't figured out that women don't want to be an equal. They want to be with a giant. They're hypergamous. They need to be with somebody better than them. They don't want equitable marriages. Nothing pisses off women more than making the same money or more money than their husband. This aligns with feminist goals of reducing gender-based power imbalances, leading to the observed, The article reveals unintended effects on lower educated women, where feminist-driven norm shifts exacerbate the marriage declines. Is that right? With highlighted expectations for equality unmet by economic realities, precarious jobs, wage gaps, inadequate family support. These women increasingly opt out of marriage, prioritizing self-reliance over unstable. Well, we know that. I mean, they're going to opt out of marriage if there's not a strong attraction or draw to men. You turn women into men by putting them into workforce. You turn women into men by putting them into schools and putting them into the workforce and the tax base, and contributing to all that. Who was it that said it? I think it was Kevin O'Leary. He said they give you a salary so that you can forget about your dreams, or they give you, or a salary is a drug that makes you forget about your dreams. And I think for women, all young girls dream about being a mom, having children, having a family. They play with dolls. That's just how most women are, right? But men don't do that. They play with shit. They construct, they build. Boys are like that. They want to go into the workforce and make something out of themselves. And I think we've done society a massive disservice, and we can see this by some of this data, and also the declining birth rates, that it's just like this experiment is just unfolding terribly. How feminism intersects with class dynamics. While it empowers these resources, it can widen inequalities for others in a U.S. context lacking universal policies like paid leave, blah, blah, blah. Others, they're still talking about barriers around leaves and affordable childcare. And it's like, you want to go and have a kid, one, and then put them in a daycare center and let them raise your child while you go off to work. You don't want to serve a man at home, but you want to serve a man in the corporation and pay taxes to the other man, the government, while the man tells you what to do because you don't want to raise your own kid. You want to put it in a daycare center and dump them off over there. And then that kid gets indoctrinated by the nonsense that's in the curriculum. It says overall, feminism shapes the article's dynamics by fueling norm changes that both destabilize traditional marriages. Yeah, we know that. Initially, and foster selective stability labor, but with uneven outcomes across. Yeah, so yeah, of course, the outcomes are uneven. Thanks, Tips. Got another one over here about fertility rates and feminism, specifically the causes and consequences of declining U.S. fertility. Summarized as economic Great Recession, housing costs. So they're saying that statistically, housing costs and policy changes explain much of the decline in the birth rate. I'm not buying that. Due to broader shifts and priorities among recent generations of young adults where parenthood plays a diminished role, it's almost like they're avoiding the topic. Are you guys getting that vibe too? Like they're avoiding the evidence that exists underlying here. I think this is what happens when you have geeks that work in feminized or feminist indoctrinated type of school systems and universities put this data together. Broader shifts in priorities among recent generations of young adults where parenthood plays a diminished role relative to other life pursuits, careers, fulfillment. They note that it seems plausible that modern cohorts of women, perhaps men, were raised with stronger expectations of life paths beyond traditional roles and spirit. Consequences include slower population, potential drags on long-term economic growth and fiscal strains. Pro-nationalist policies tried in high-income countries, childcare subsidies, parental leave. Man, they try to compensate with all these programs, childcare subsidies, parental leave, cash incentives. They even have tax incentives in some countries like Hungary and Poland, where you get tax breaks. Some of them are weird. I know the one in Hungary has been like pretty much a failure because they only offer the tax breaks to the mom, but the dad gets nothing. So you want to keep her home having children, but he gets no tax breaks. It's just her. So basically you have to pump the income through your wife, income sharing, which doesn't really promote a patriarchal or a male-led household, if you know what I'm saying. Adapting increased immigration and productivity gains to offset slower native pop. So that's their solution, is basically crank out more immigration and then improve productivity, which That's already a problem, because the vast majority of guys that I talk to when it comes to one-on-one or any of these groups that I work within is a lot of these employees at jobs, JOB stands for just over broke, they find themselves in many situations being asked to do a lot more for virtually the same pay, which you can see how that's working out. It's just not a very productive, it's not a very successful strategy, because it's burning a lot of guys out, a lot of men and women out, actually. The piece is concise, policy oriented, blah, 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 economic strategy group. Okay, let's see how they summarize how feminism affects it in the broader context. The broader economics literature on fertility studied feminism and associated changes play an indirect but significant role in explaining long-term fertility declines in high-income countries. Second wave, 1960 to 1980 onward. And women's empowerment expanded access to education, careers, contraception, labor force participation, higher female education, and wages raised the opportunity costs of childbearing, historically contributing to lower fertility via negative income fertility link for women. Yeah, who would have thought that, huh? This helped drive the initial drop from higher levels post-World War II baby boom to below replacement in many countries. We just talked about that like 10 minutes ago. More recent research, economic fertility new era, often cite. I don't see any real solutions here from any of these fucking nerds putting these together. I'll talk about the real solutions after this. Fertility increasing compatibility, career and family for women. You can't, jack of all trade, masters of none. You can't be a mom and a career gal at the same time. You see very few women pull it off. And even then, I don't think that this experiment's going to play out very well, because they don't pump out very many kids, like 1 or 2 kids usually. And they're not a active participant usually in the upbringing of the children. So they end up producing mostly idiots. Compatibility of criminal factors in the ease of this tension, supportive family policies. Whereas the gender equality advances, but without sufficient support structures, very low fertility. Yeah, you're saying shit that we already know. Shifted priorities align with this. Cultural changes promoted feminist ideas, in short. But in every single one of these studies, this is how they summarize it. In short, feminism isn't portrayed as a direct, quote unquote, villain in serious economic analysis like this one, but as part of a larger set of social transformations that increase women's options and raise the perceived cost trade-offs of having more children. Another shitty, useless paper that doesn't offer any solutions. Got another one over here. Got 2 left. We'll get into the meat. We'll get in the meat and potatoes in a little bit. U.S. fertility is declining due to delayed marriage and childbearing. So this study was published. That's the title of it. It was published. It's most recent, 2025. It's not even 6 months old. Total fertility rate, TFR, has fallen well below the replacement rate of 2.1 per children since the Great Recession, remaining sub-replacement and showing no signs of rebounding without major changes. The core thesis is that much of this decline stems from women postponing births, largely because of increasing delays in marriage. Thanks, Sherlock Holmes. Which shrinks the window for having children, especially with stable partner. As soon as you hear partner, you know it's one of these dorky, like, egalitarian, feminist-led sort of publications. My partner. The postponement risk becoming permanent foregone fertility as biological limits and other factors intervene. So key stats that they found. Fertility shifts by age. Birth rates for women aged 20 to 24 plummeted from 167 per 1,000 in 1970 to 55 in 2023. Holy shit. That's fucking huge. So 2024 would be ideal childbearing years. I think that's when most people would have gotten married in like the 50s. They would have been 2 horny teenagers that weren't allowed to have sex, that lived with their parents, that were part of a church or something like that. And they got married and they had sex for the first time. And the birth rates went from 167 per 1,000. So this is 1970, sorry, not 1950s, but 1970, but it was way higher, to 55 per thousand in 2023. Rates rose for women in their 30s, 30 34, now the highest group, but not enough to offset the earlier drops. You know, women's fertility goes right off a cliff, starts to go right off a cliff after the age of 30. I think most medical professionals consider women over the age of 35 to be high risk pregnancies. That's where they run into problems, geriatric problems and shit like that. So it's not ideal for them to postpone it. But part of the postponing, obviously, is let's go get degrees. Let's party through our 20s and travel Europe and fuck a bunch of dudes and then enter their workforce and climb the corporate ladder. And then they're like 34, 35, and then they want to start having kids. Marriage delays is another key stat they cite here. Median age at first marriage rose significantly since 1960. Women are up 8 years. Men are up 7 years. The share of women aged 20 to 44 who are married fell from 57% in 2004 to 45% in 2023. I mean, we already knew that. With the steepest declines amongst women between 20 and 35. Well, shocking. I mean, we've been talking about this for years, right? Women in that age bracket, definitely in their 20s, spend way too much time wasting away their prime years on pursuits, hedonic pursuits, bullshit pursuits that don't amount to family formation and children. It amounts to partying, notch counts, abortions, and a whole bunch of other bullshit. Other patterns. Births to married women rose until 2016, then declined. Unwed births plateaued around 40%. Cohabitation often precedes or replaces marriage, but leads to fewer children and less stability. I mean, I talk about the 3 iddies in my second book, Top Shelf Man, and how to manage those. Let's connect those two. Broader implications. Large cohorts of women recently entered peak childbearing years without a mini baby boom, and ideal family sizes remain stable. Many want more kids, but they're not having them. Well, who do you got to blame for that? Main causes discussed. Education and time spent in school. Yeah, let's educate the fuck out of everybody and teach them things they probably don't need to know and indoctrinate them in ways that don't matter if you want to have a country filled with little children. You get the point. Increased female labor force participation, career priorities, cohabitation as a step or alternative to marriage, reducing transitions to stable unions, economic hurdles like student debt, home unaffordability. Well, oh, you want to talk about student debt now, do you? How are you going to encourage women to have children with men if you encourage them so strongly to go to school and get an education and take on debt that's going to take them forever to pay off? Debt is slavery. I know. I used to run Canada's biggest debt settlement company for fucking years. And that's how you control the population. You put them in debt. You give them credit cards. You go to like universities and colleges, and you give kids credit cards. And you say 6-month introductory rate, 0% interest. And then you say, take on this student loan and take these bullshit courses in basket weaving and feminist ideologies and stuff like that. And they sign up for it. And then they end up with a ton of debt that they feel obligated to pay off, which they never really do. It's just burdensome. Prioritizing leisure accomplishments or the right partner is another main cause that they discuss, because women put off marrying the guy when they're in their best position to marry the right guy. Like a 23-year-old gal is in the best position to negotiate. I'm using the term negotiate, but to find the right guy to have a kid with. But they don't do it at 23 when their value is the highest. Instead, when their value is the highest on the sexual marketplace, they're running around being hoes, right? Getting degrees, climbing the corporate ladder, partying, traveling Europe, because they're waiting for the right partner to show up. And they end up in their 30s without the right partner, with way fewer options, already alpha widowed, with a huge notch count, a couple of abortions behind them, thinking that they're going to, solidify something right then and there. Whose fault is that? Who lied to women, right? Culture, society, Hollywood, popular culture, music, sitcoms, religion, even. Definitely the school system, the government, 100%. Like, the government is playing the victim in the chaos that it created. I fucking hate situations. This is one of the things that annoys the shit out of me, is when a person or an entity plays the victim in the chaos that it created. Women cry that they can't find a good man, and then they routinely put themselves in rooms where no good men exist. And they waste away the best part of their life, their highest value, on pursuits that don't lead to the right partner. They got the right partner in quote unquote in there, right? Let's see how feminism was assessed in this particular study. The specific report does not directly blame or discuss feminism as a well, fucking shocking. Why wouldn't it? Who's it written by here? Childbearing, U.S. fertility, published by Jonathan Abamonte. I don't know who this guy is. It focuses on delayed marriage, childbearing without invoking feminist ideology. Second way, we need to start blaming. We need to start shaming and blaming and pointing to the facts and stop lying to people. Well, it's because people are delaying marriage and childbearing because they're going to school and they're prioritizing, getting a job and paying off their student loan. And who the fuck told women to do all that stupid shit when they could have found a guy at 22 and had a family then and had a bunch of kids, which is what the government's basically saying and all these reports and studies, right? What's the problem? Well, it's not really feminism. It's not our fault as a government, It lists contributing factors like women's higher education, career focus, labor participation, but frames them neutrally as part of a broader societal trend. A societal trend enforced and reinforced by government policy. The Heritage Foundation's wider commentary and related reports, broader family policy pieces. There's more criticism of cultural shifts tied to sexual revolution, individualism, and sometimes implicitly or explicitly to feminism, portrayed as promoting careerism over family. Same fucking thing. Tomato, tomato. Child-free lifestyles, delayed family formation. These are all key underlying notions of the toxic feminist narrative that convinces women to do all of these things. Broader research shows mixed effects. Early feminism, egalitarian norms contributing to fertility rights by enabling women to prioritize. It's the same fucking story over and over again. They know what the problem is, but they don't want to accept it and point to it. It's toxic feminism. Summary of this page, CDC, National Center for Health Statistics, data 2024 announces provisional data for U.S. births in 2023, highlighting continued decline in fertility. Let's see what these morons say. The general fertility rate, births per 1,000 women ages 15 to 44, dropped 3%. Okay, reaching a historic low, 54 to 54.5. Provisional figures, later figure, blah, blah, blah. The final, this is what, for 1 year? Okay, so it drops in 1 year. The number of births fell 2%. Okay, this marked the second straight year of decline. Okay, well, we already know that. Age-specific changes. Birth rates declined for women ages 20 to 39, unchanged just for 10 to 14. What? Why are they fucking talking about birth rates for 10 to 14? Teen births fell 3% to 13.2 per thousand. You know what's actually funny? Actually, I'll get to that in a little bit. Other notes, cesarean delivery rates rose 32.4%. Preterm births stayed roughly. So I don't know if you guys know this, but if you've had a kid, you end up dealing with a doctor, and they're the baby delivery doctor. I can't remember what they're called. They don't like the idea of women pushing for cesarean sections, because What they say now is that women are too posh to push. They think that they're better than having to do what Mother Nature naturally calls upon them to do, to push the baby out. And by the way, that's where they get all of the benefits through the birth canal that they don't receive when there's a cesarean section. There's all kinds of microbiome and shit that happens. I can't remember all the details that he was explaining, but there's a lot of benefits to pushing the baby out the conventional way that's been done for millions of years since the beginning of time. But now women are too posh to push, and cesareans are 1/3 of deliveries now. One full third of deliveries. That's insane, because women are too fucking lazy to push a baby out. And here's the best part. Women want a push present now. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's this trending notion, especially in circles where women are all like, like the standard, like forward-thinking progressive broads. They want a push present. It's like your present's the baby, but they want like a watch or some diamonds or some jewelry or something like that to push out the baby. A buddy of mine was telling me this story that his girl told him that she wanted a push present, and he basically told her to go fuck herself, right? This is frame, by the way. Like when we talk about the notion of frame in long-term relationships, this is where you put your foot down. I want a push present. No, simple. You want a baby? Push it out like fucking everybody else did for millions of years. Give it all the natural benefits of a natural birth. Cut it out. Cesarean, lazy fucking shit. The release links the full provisional report. Let's see here. Later finalized data, assuming current one. Let's go. Okay, so let's see if they found anything. Again, these are all AI sort of summaries that I've asked, and I asked AI to define how feminism affected the fertility rates in the study. And all of them that we've seen so far don't blame it. So let's see here. The page itself does not discuss causes like feminism. Shocking. Another one. Economics, education, or culture. It simply reports the numbers without any kind of analysis. Yeah, because they don't want to get to the nitty gritty. They don't want to get to the root of the problem. Fertility declines, 1970s, empowerment and opportunity effects feminist movements advocated for and help achieve greater access. Again, same thing, education, workforce participation, contraception, abortion access, shifting norms around gender roles, women prioritizing careers, financial independence, and personal goals, blah, 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 instead of large families. It's the same shit. And all of that is pushed upon women through the toxic feminist narrative. Evidence of correlation, countries, regions with stronger gender equality, often tied to feminist influence policies, tend to have lower fertility rates. What did I say when I showed you the map earlier? There's a direct correlation between birth rates and toxic feminist ideology. It's poison, it's cancer. In the US, women's labor force participation rose sharply from the 60s to 90s alongside fertility. The fucking government's complaining, we don't have a fertility. We got a fertility issue. What do we do, George? Oh, I don't know. It's not my fault. It's your fault. The government put these policies into place. It's the dumbest fucking thing ever, playing the victim and the chaos that they created. And then their solution to it all is just import people from fucking countries that have really high birth rates. My family's an immigrant to Canada from the United Kingdom. When my family came from England to Canada, you didn't just show up and go, hey, I've arrived. You had to apply. They wouldn't let you in if you didn't fucking apply. My dad was telling me the story. And when you applied, you got a point for having a degree. You got a point for speaking either French or English. Canada has 2 languages. You got a point if you had a wife and children. It was basically on a point system. You got a point if you had assets that would allow you to buy a house. They were basically looking for people that were skilled, that would bring some value to the country, and they allowed you to immigrate on conditions when they were met to come in. They don't do that anymore, though. Now it's just, You got a pulse? Cool. Come on in and have a bunch of babies. And we'll give you some welfare and housing and accommodation. And here's a cell phone too, by the way, and all that kind of shit. It's just like, how's that working out? You know, you have your domestic population, which has been here for, generations, dying out because you're telling women that they don't need no man and they should go into the workforce and get degrees and pay student debt and travel the world and fuck a bunch of dudes without any kind of consequences whatsoever. And don't worry about it, girl, because later on down the road, if you want to have them, you can do it. And the girls hear the ads on the radio. Hey, IVF clinics, you can have kids when you're in your 40s. No fucking problem at all. It's all cool. Give us $80,000 and we'll fucking mix it under a petri dish and a microscope. And then they hear all these narratives and they're like, yeah, let's go do it. Wow, Ibiza, foam cannon party. Ooh, fucking just, this is where they end up. And the government has these universities and schools writing down, partner again. Anyway, you get the idea. Like, none of them say anything different. It's the same conclusion. Exact same. Now, check this out. I came across this the other day. Let's see here. In the US, for the very first time in history, more babies are now born to women over 40 than teenagers. Let that sink in. Now, somebody here asked Grok to confirm that. Where is it? Grok, how accurate is that statement? The claim is accurate. According to CDC data in 2023, births to women over 40 exceeded those to teenagers. That's 3 years ago. This is just a big L for the United States. Big, big fat L. Before I get into the other ones over here, let me do this. Invite, copy. I'm going to drop the call-in link. If you guys want to discuss this, ask me any questions. Call in and ask a question. Maybe you want to debate me on this, your call. There's the link. I'll pin it to the top of YouTube, so it's there. If you guys want to ask me anything. I'm going to run the ad reel and grab a drink real quick. I'll be right back. This episode is sponsored by yours truly. Gentlemen, if you're new here, your starting point is to get on my email list and join 50,000 other readers. Just scroll down and opt in over here with your information. And that's where you can download the free chapters on the 21 red flags to avoid and the 16 green flags to seek in long-term relationships. Just navigate to entrepreneursandcars.com/red-flags and get started there. Beyond that, there's book one, The Unplugged Alpha, which has sold over 250,000 copies and summarizes the way the world and women truly work. And then there's book two, recently released, The Top Shelf Man, which takes you far deeper down the rabbit hole and is about how the top 5% of men get everything they want out of life and women. Both books are very highly rated. I guarantee that you'll love them both. You can find them on Amazon. Now, brothers, if you like me and you take what you put in your body very seriously, you're going to want to use the Unplugged Alpha supplement line. It's the obsession with engineering higher absorption rates that sets my line apart from the others. You want to make sure that you absorb as much of the supplements as possible so you don't end up peeing out expensive urine and wasting your money. My supplement line is made in the United States from the highest quality ingredients, and unlike your typical cheap supplements in plastic bottles that originated from China, only quality supplements ship in dark glass bottles to keep your supplements fresher, longer, and don't seep endocrine disrupting microplastics into your supplements that end up in your body. You can filter all products by your goals, including testosterone support, estrogen metabolism, fat burning, sleep support, and performance. Just visit theunpluggedalpha.com/shop and use the subscribe and save option to get 10% off your recurring supplement orders. Or check out my brand new testosterone bundle and save as much as 18% when you stack them all together. And lastly, if you've enjoyed my books and video content, you're going to absolutely love the School of Unplugging, which is my private community for men. Inside, you'll find over 50 hours of never before seen videos in a private classroom setting that'll teach you how to level up and apply the 7 spokes of a high value man to your life so that you can get the results that you're looking for. You can just copy and paste all the simple formulas to success on wealth creation, improving your looks, status, captivation, game, frame, and so much more with other men on their own unplugging journey. There's also a well-organized discussion board, meetups in real life, weekly Zoom calls that are recorded, held by me and my team of experts, all for a monthly membership that costs less than a cup of coffee, and there is brand new content being added every single month. The calendar tab makes spotting exactly what it is that you're looking for very simple, and all you do is you add it to your own calendar. See the description below for a link to everything I just mentioned above, or visit richcooper.ca, and on the courses tab, you can navigate to the School of Unplugging. Guys, make sure you check out the rest of my personal website and everything else, or to request a private one-on-one consultation with me. Now let's get on with the show. All right, we're back. Again, guys, if you enjoy these shows and the content, you love tuning in, I don't take support from any outside sources or any sponsorships. I haven't done that in a few years. It's me, my books, my community. I do one-on-one coaching if you need it. You can find all that on the website or in the ticker below. You can start there. It's up to you. Let me just pull this out over here. And I saw a couple of comments over here. Somebody here, Christine, said C-sections are only necessary in life-saving situations. Most births are normal. You're right, but 1/3 of women are using C-sections to deliver babies. A full 1/3 of pregnancies probably don't need them. A lot of the times women like to schedule them because they're, again, too posh to push. That's just how things are today. I think we need special immigration status for women under 24, 12-month temporary worker and school visa. Yeah, you know what? That would actually be smart. Rather than importing people that are at the end of their reproductive abilities, bring immigrants in that are under a certain age, and women, a good chunk of women, because that's how you make babies, right? Very simple. So let's just switch over here to another tab. Now, this is really interesting because this is one of the consequences not directly associated to the reduction in childbirth, but downstream effect to the notion of what happens when you shove women into places that they don't belong. Let me see here. So this is a clip that I tripped across. It says, ever wonder why women make horrible judges? Now, a few weeks ago when I was in Dubai, I was talking to somebody about their policies there because I'm genuinely interested in, you know, if I'm going to travel, let me just pull this out. If I'm going to travel and look for a place that treats me better, that doesn't rob me of my wealth and takes it and spends it on stupid shit, then I want to know more about the country. I want to know more about their policies. And one of the questions that I was asking was, in the United Arab Emirates, do they have female judges? Do they have women in politics? If you'll recall, last summer, there was a fella by the name of DeCarlo something or another, and he was the one that jammed his pocket knife in that Ukrainian girl's neck and killed her on the train. He was let out on bail. It was over 40 something times by mostly female magistrates. I mean, somebody did a collage of all of the judges that ruled on either locking him up or setting him free or putting him on bail or whatever it happened to be. And they were all mostly black chicks. And when I was there in Dubai, I was asking that question, you know, do you guys have female judges? And he said no, because women are deemed incapable of passing judgment because of their emotions, because they have periods, obviously. Okay, that makes sense. Now, here's an interesting study that was done on the notion of why women make horrible judges. And this chick over here will summarize it for you in just 1 second. Let me put it up on the screen. You should be able to get the audio. Tell me in the chat if the audio is not working. I'll fix it, but it should be working. But check this out.
There was a study done where men and women were hooked up to brain scanners as they watched people play a game. They got to see whether the people playing the game were playing fairly or whether they were cheating at the game. And the people playing were connected to electric shock machines. So Electric shocks would go into these people as they were playing, and they would measure the brains of the men and women watching. So every time a player that was playing fairly got an electric shock, both men and women's empathy centers lit up. Whenever an electric shock would go into a person that was cheating, women's empathy centers lit up just the same as with the fair playing person, but men's empathy centers did not light up at all. Actually, their pleasure center lit up. Super key psychological distinction between men and women.
Well, isn't that fascinating? Let's stick women into positions that they're incapable of performing well in. I mean, what do men suck at? Having babies. Genuinely. They just don't do it, right? I don't think women should be in policing, in firefighting, in the military, in politics, and certainly in the judiciary system. And clearly, they're incapable of doing so, which is why many modern Western feminist-run type of countries have such shitty fucking public issues, i.e. what happened on that train last summer with the DeCarlo John, whatever the fuck his name was, that murdered that Ukrainian girl. Let out on bail 46 times, mostly by female judges. Why? Because you stick chicks in the judge's seat, clearly. They're not capable of managing these things. But when toxic feminist narratives keep telling, and again, this is just one corner of the internet, one corner of the world that suffers as a consequence of let's stick women in places that they don't belong, right? You want to have population replacing itself? Have men and women fucking having children. Ban abortions across the country, maybe with some exceptions for grape or something like that, but completely, like across the board for the most part, right? Like there has to be sweeping changes made if you want to fix any of these problems. That's just an example of one of them. You know, as I was talking earlier, as I was reading those reports, yeah, to that point, men do love justice. Like we actually enjoy when judgment is passed and it's righteous. Women will feel empathy for the guy, right? And how does that end? Unsafe society. There's another one over here, but I don't think I can play the audio simply because it's got music. So I'm just going to read the summary out to you. I'll put it up on the screen so you can. I don't know who this guy is. I'll, just try to give him credit for it. But when these guys put these clips together and then they run audio under it, it causes problems for the YouTube. So I'll just read it out to you. How does feminism kill a nation? Political analysis, Helen Andrews assigns a collapse to the great feminization, essentially the systematic importing of women and feminine traits into masculine institutions. We know it. Ugh, this guy's going way too fast with this fucking shit over here. Sorry, I'm going to have to slow this down a little bit. Back it up. Sorry, guys. We know as institutions, they're just groups of people. And when these groups are dominated by women, those institutions begin to function according to feminine impulses. Let me just give you a few examples, he says. Law school and the majority of females in 2016. Medical schools followed by majority of females by 2019. University faculty became majority female by 2023. 54% of the Associated Press is female. College graduates are now 60% women. HR departments across Fortune 500 companies are 75 to 85% female. Psychology majors, 80% female. Public school teachers, 77% female. Many of the culturally shaping institutions in America are now dominated by women. Andrews notes the institutions run by a large number of women shift the culture from confrontation to consensus, from competition to accommodation, from principle to sentiment. Now, this isn't an insult. This is just biology. Women rank significantly higher in agreeableness, we've known this for years, and empathy, and conflict avoidance compared to men. Why, you run into these problems with these, with these female judges, right? Conflict avoidance. We got to be empathetic to everybody. Anyway,
men.
compared to men. Sorry, I got to mute this because of the music. So what happens when feminine traits dominate fields that require ruthless consistency and raw truths, like law or governance or politics or military or police or academia or theology? Well, you get a nation governed by feelings, not convictions. You get emotional management, not moral clarity. The priorities of masculine resolve and advancement shift toward bureaucracy and meetings, and everybody is constantly concerned, and HR swells. Disagreements, the fucking thing is contrasted over white. It's hard to read some of this. HR swells. Disagreements, are essentially, can't read that word, aggression. Tolerance becomes a virtue, and success becomes secondary to managing people's feelings. Chesterton said, civilizations crumble when they forget obvious truths. That is, biblically and historically, none of this should surprise us. Men are designed by God to rule, build, and protect. Women are designed to nurture, support, and stabilize households. So the rise of feminism is directly correlated with the decline of American strength. Now, if I had to sum up this whole sentence, it would be this: a nation cannot survive when it denies nature. Fair presentation. Fair presentation. I wish I could give credit to this guy and let him read it out, because he actually had a very well-spoken presentation, but the music fucks it up. Some of the points that I already made already, right? Some of the very points that I made already. Let's close that. We'll close the fertility rate chart. You get the idea, right? Let's have a look here at the chat and see if I've missed anything. People are fighting for ideology that exists for hundreds of years. Love your show. Call in you butts. Everybody likes to rip it up in the comments section or afterwards. The call-in link's there, guys. If you want to shoot the shit, I am here. Let's shoot the shit. Christine said, I had babies in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. Same experience every time, all healthy. Awesome. Well done. If men were meant to be with brainless women, then women would be born without the capabilities of being intelligent. A woman can be intelligent but not being feminist. You know what the problem with that is that feminist ideology has indoctrinated all women. It's not some women, it's not just liberal women. All women will rely on toxic feminist narratives at some point. There has to be a no quarter policy when it comes to fixing the problems with society. So let's deal with that, right? Because I said at the start of the show, let's have some conversations around what some solutions look like, what some prescriptions look like to fix the birth rate. Because that's really what, my contractor gave me when he put all this stuff together with these studies and reports. The title of it is How Feminism Ruined Fertility Rates, right? And Destroyed Modern Marriages. Well, if you want to fix fertility rates, you need to have men and women coming together, having children. So, bottom line, you have to start shaming degeneracy. You have to shame promiscuity. You have to shame the notion of wasting time, money, and resources on any pursuit that does not net in a pregnancy, essentially, if you want the population and the birth rates to fix themselves. Look, you go to the maps that I showed you earlier. Africa has no problems making a fuck ton of babies. It's like 6 per woman, and it's probably going to keep going up. They're mostly patriarchal societies. They mostly respect men. They don't recommend women go and get a whole bunch of useless degrees in pointless studies and put off having children. They recommend women finding good men and having babies, right? That's now the culture is not perfect. It's obviously fucked up in many ways in that regard, but society had it right for a time. Population grew quite a lot in modern Western countries. Like the United States has, what is it, 340 million people now? A few hundred years ago, it was a bunch of fucking nobodies here, almost nobody. The vast majority of the United States was populated by English, German, French, Norwegian, Irish, Scottish, Italian, but mostly English, which why they speak English in the US. Same thing with Canada. Same thing with Australia and New Zealand. And the model that they used back then obviously was men go out and do shit and they lead and they provide and women look after the household. Men go out and they bring home the bacon and women cook it up. You need to return to a structure that's very, very similar or closely approximates some version of that, which means you have to discourage, men from just being themselves, taking on bitch lifestyle sort of choices. You have to encourage men to go out there and do something significant, go out there and put a dent in the universe. And you have to encourage women to want to be wives and to find men and stop telling them to behave like men. Stop telling them to act like men. Go out and be a cop. Go out and be a firefighter. Be a judge. Be a politician. Be anything that's not a mom, basically. Be a mom. That's really what it just, boils down to. But people keep fighting this, man. People keep fighting this really, really hard. And I don't see it changing any kind of direction. I have a lot of conversations with guys like this, and they're like, how do we fix this, man? We got to change the policies, Rich. Why don't you run for prime minister? Why don't you run for president and fix all this shit? You've got the most right-leaning president in the United States right now, and he can't get shit done. He's trying to deport people that don't belong there, and cities are having fucking meltdowns. They're impeding the authorities, and then they're crying like little bitches when bad things happen. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, man. Like, there's a lot more that needs to be done to fix the problems that exist right now in a lot of these Western countries that have shitty birth rates, right? I'm going to grab this call in over here in a second. We'll see what he's got for us. And then we'll come back to these comments in a little second. Fountainhead.
Hey, Rich. How you doing?
Baker.
Hey, Rich. I just put in those comments, Aaron Clary said that about 1/3 of American women work in childcare. And also,
I don't think it's 1/3. That seems really high.
And I don't know what it's like in Canada, but I swear the number one employer of African-American women is got to be the government. Women in America are doing so many jobs where they're just pushing papers and going to meetings.
Well, they're modern daycare centers a lot of the time. There's been lots of jokes and memes done about this where a lot of women go to work and you see them on TikTok and Instagram reels and stuff like that. It's like day in the life of a New York, 23-year-old tech fucking whatever, STEM worker at Google. And it's like the whole day is her drinking coffee, going to the cafeteria, taking a nap in a bubble, sitting in a meeting with her Apple laptop, taking another nap, getting another coffee, like sitting on a beanbag chair in a circle with a bunch of other women. A lot of these jobs are daycare centers and they don't really fucking do anything, right? Like they could just not go to work and the world would still function just fine.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and also medical coding. I don't know if they call it that in Canada, but like just dealing with the entire healthcare bureaucracy, which just is growing by leaps and bounds in America. I don't know.
Where did Aaron get that data about 1/3 of women being in childcare?
I'm not sure where Aaron got that data, but that's what I just remember him saying that somewhere. So, and I'd also point out too, there's a whole lot of women that work in elder care.
Well, that's what women excel at. They can be a net provide like a net benefit if they're in fields like nursing, elder care, child care, things like that. But that's a lot of the time roles that a lot of moms should be filling. Let me just check real quick here. According to data in the U.S., 92% of childcare workers are women, with 7% being men. I wouldn't want any of my kids in a fucking men's childcare center. That would be just weird. 90 context. It doesn't say 4% of women are in childcare. It's not 1/3. That I don't know where you got.
What about teachers?
Teachers are 77%.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd include teachers as part of childcare, even though it's not technically childcare.
It's education. It's not childcare, but I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, yeah, my mother, who's gone, she was a housewife and she was a poll worker her whole life, and when my mother was a poll worker, voting precincts, election day.
Okay, poll worker, like working at the polls.
Election day, voting precincts were small, about 1,000 people. And when somebody walked in to vote, well, the ladies working the polls knew who everybody was, and I noticed as my mother got older, it got to a point where poll workers all became retirees, and now we have less voting precincts. You have to wait in line more to vote. And that's why voter ID in America has now become an issue when before it wasn't, because, small voting precincts where everybody knew everybody. That's another
voter ID is an issue because women make it an issue because of toxic feminism, because they want it all to be like they want to paint everything with rainbows and butterflies, and they don't want to exclude anybody. They don't want anybody to feel bad. And that's what happens when you run a gynocentric social order. That's what happens when you let women make all the decisions. That's what happens when you put women in policy making. You end up with situations where a piece of shit goes out on bail 46 times and murders a fucking new immigrant girl that's just trying to get home from her pizza job, right?
But then, Richard, you also end up with a situation like what happened with those hockey players.
Which hockey players?
The hockey players who all got accused of rape and all that horse shit.
Yeah, well, then you get the Me Too eras too, as well, where you just believe all women all the time too.
I mean,
there's sweeping changes that would need to be made. Like, there's guys that don't want to deal with women. I get it. Like, they don't want to marry them. They don't want to live with them. They don't want to like overtly do anything that might put them at risk where they could get Me Too'd. I get it. Like, there's also that notion too. Like, the notion that feminism just ruined birth rates is one aspect of the whole thing. Okay, it's just one symptom of the whole thing.
Yeah, and I how do we get out of this? I don't really. Well, I do know, but I don't know.
I'll continue to share my thoughts, but thanks for popping in, Chris. Appreciate it. See you, man. Yeah, so you'd have to go back to the origins of how the country was founded. They had a much better strategy, back in those days. And I'm not suggesting put everybody back in a time machine and, go back exactly the way the things were, but you have to realize that what we're doing ain't fucking working. You've got a dying nation. You got dying nations being replaced by foreign entities like Spain, 0.6. South Korea won't exist in 100 years. There'll be no South Koreans. It just will fucking die out, right? In several generations. Like, there's places on Earth right now where people just won't exist because the notion of not having families and not, having babies and putting off all of the things that we've been placed here to do, to scatter seed. Men have been placed here to scatter seed, and women have been placed here to have babies, and they're supposed to raise them together, sort of thing, and then send them off in the world. I was talking to my family a couple of months ago, and I remember asking, my mom's side and my dad's side of the family, it's like, how many kids came from each, side, and it was just like, 16 kids, and then I went down to 12 kids, and 2 of them died, and then went down to like 8 kids, and 1 of them died, sort of thing. And it's like, then I come from a family of 3 boys, right? So it's like, you go down from 16 to 12 to 8, and it's like, you go right down the line, and everybody's having less and less kids. And then you got, environments today where guys are like, hey, Rich, I want to have a family. What's the best way to have a family? And I got to spend hours putting fucking like thinking through all the ways to mitigate the potential downsides and the risks. Family law would just have to be abolished completely. China has just announced in the last year that there's no division of assets. You want guys to get married and not, be concerned about prenups or being divorce raped or any of those things. That would be a very wise policy to rip off and duplicate. R&D stands for rip off and duplicate from Asia, put it in North America into the family court system and just say there's no division of assets. 50-50 child support if you want to leave. Simple. That would solve a lot of men's commitment hesitancy towards the notion of marriage. But that's going to mean that you're going to have to change the rights that women have. That would have to be the other thing too. Like, you want to keep women out of the voting poll houses, the voting arenas completely, because they vote for stupid shit. It's always the same fucking thing every election, right? Got to be inclusive, got to be thoughtful. We need to tax the rich. We need to fucking rob the people that are creating the value in the country, rob from them to give it to the people that don't do anything, right? How's that working out? You got to change policies broadly right across the board to fix as much of this as you can possibly do. And that's going to, mean sweeping changes. And that's going to mean people are going to protest and cry about it. But to be honest with you, one of the things I learned when I was in the United Arab Emirates is they don't put up with any of that bullshit. You want to protest, you can fuck off. You're going to jail. This is the policy. That's the way things are. If you don't like it, you can leave the country. That's why like 90% of the people there are expats, right? They don't have citizenship. They don't have a passport. They're not citizens. They can just deport them at any time, which is actually kind of smart. Because if you start acting like a dickhead, they just send you off, right? Or you want to protest Israel or Palestine or Afghanistan or whatever the fucking stand it is that you want to protest, go to that country and they just fucking deport you because they don't want to put up with that shit. Seems harsh, but it's also pretty smart policy that you don't have to put up with any of that nonsense. This is our rule of law and this is how things are going to be. And if you don't like it, these are the consequences and they got to be harsh. And a lot of people won't like that. What do you want me to say? We are moving into very strange times, because I don't see any adoption of any of the recommendations that I've made. Like, you've seen the recommendation from Hungary. I think Poland was another one where they offered very strong tax incentives. Like, you have 3 children or more and you don't pay any taxes, or you pay like a reduced tax rate or a strongly reduced tax rate. Do you see your Western government and the United States and Canada and England and Australia and Spain and Italy offering tax incentives like that to increase the birth rate of the domestic population? No, they just keep letting foreigners come in. They keep telling you that they're doctors and engineers, but we keep seeing them not acting like doctors and engineers, right? JF, let's see what you got here for me. JF, what's up, buddy?
Hey, Rich. Jeremy, I'm actually in the school of unplugging with you guys, and cool. Just want to say thanks for putting all that together. You're big inspiration to me, and the unplugging school of unplugging has been a great experience, and I don't utilize it enough, but at any rate, I am part of that, and either way, it's great to be a part of that. So
amazing. Thank you.
But no, the reason why I called, I think, in that school of unplugging, I've posted about my divorce and etc. And it's been ongoing for it's going to be 2 years since I filed back in March, right? So and it kind of dawned on me after watching today's episodes. I mean, I have basically 4 women involved in this whole process. My attorney is a woman. Mm-hmm. My wife's attorney is a woman. Mm-hmm. The GAL is a woman, and the mm-hmm. judge is a woman. Mm-hmm. So I'm,
and you got your ex-wife too.
Yeah. And her too. Right. So, you know, I don't know if the process has been taking so long because
Here's
it
the funny
has
thing
been
about
very
all of that.
emotional.
Like, men used to be the head of the household. They used to be king of the castle. Now you've got all these broads making decisions for you.
Yeah, you know, and I think like going into it, like some of my friends are saying like, well, you should get a woman attorney because
Mhm.
you know you're going to be dealing with a lot of women throughout the process here, and that may be to your advantage. And I mean, I'm getting, you know, 50-50 custody, you know,
Good.
of the kids at this point. So, you know, not, we're still got to work through financials, but I don't know what your thoughts would be on like, you know, in that kind of a situation to, if a guy's going through divorce, you know, to have either a female attorney or a male attorney.
So my thought on that is that women have no way of coming anywhere close to comprehending what the male experience is. My lawyer was a guy, and he was a fucking superb lawyer. He did a great job. You know, it was just phenomenal. So, you know, the answer to that question is, to all of these questions should always be, you put the best person for the job in that job,
Yeah.
right? And that might be a chick, but it's my opinion that women really, really struggle because of their solipsism to see past their own noses and try to understand the male experience. They try, like, even when you see these female MRAs, like these men's rights activists, they get like 95% of it pretty like spot on, but there's still that small element that they just won't, like, you know, it's like a guy pretending to be a chick. You know, when you get these guys that dress up as a woman and then they go around and they want to read books to children and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
nobody's buying that with a fucking brain, right? You know, it's the same sort of thing, you know, honestly, at the end of the day. But uh, it's just one of the things that you have to deal with as a man now, that is also one of the things that makes men commitment hesitant, you know, towards marriage, especially when they hear stories like you're telling and the millions of other men that experience the consequences of family court that nobody fucking cares about. And we never get any fucking apologies from anybody over the whole thing, because what do I tell you guys? You know, nobody cares about men. That's just the way things are. And the sooner that you get to understanding that you're on your own and that pushing through is the only thing that you can do, the easier it is to get through the other side. I'm not saying it's going to happen any faster, but the easier it is to get through the other side when you understand that that's just the way things are.
Right. Yeah, it was a big realization. Just this is what it is, and you know, it's not sugar coated anymore. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, tons of emotion from, you know, I've had to calm my lawyer down a couple times. You know, like just being so emotional about everything, and you know, pissed off
Well,
and this and that. I'm trying to get her back on track, right? You
well,
know,
that's
and
that's too much work then. I mean, like, that's one of the
right,
reasons why I would recommend guys have a male lawyer, because they understand the process. I mean, the question that I asked my lawyer when I first met him, I knew he was good anyway, but the question I asked is, have you been divorced? What was that experience like for you?
yeah,
And what would you do differently? And it's like everything, he fucking nailed it on the head. I'm like, you're my guy. Let's go. Like, what's the retainer?
right,
Who do I write the check to? Sort of thing.
yeah,
But these are all things that we shouldn't have to do. You know, you go back 500 years, 1,000 years, the whole purpose of marriage was the acquisition of in-laws. And if
right,
it didn't work out and she didn't want to be married to you anymore, which was very rare, her option was either go and live with her family or work in a brothel, right?
yeah,
Like, there was no
yeah,
strong independent women. So people stayed married and they had children. But then, you know, the toxic feminists will argue, well, what if he was abusive, or what if he blah, 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 or she should have the right to leave, sort of thing. It's like, then go. But you don't get half of anybody's shit, and you share custody 50-50 under the rule of law. And that's just the way things should be. There shouldn't ever have to be a fight to see your own children. There shouldn't ever have to be a fight for you to keep the stuff that you worked hard for. But that's the
absolutely.
reality of the world that we live in today. And that's one of the things that makes men commitment hesitant towards women.
Yeah. No, I look forward to the, you know, I know you're talking about putting some content together about the divorcing process or life after the divorce. I think you mentioned something about that, so I look forward to that. And no, thanks for all your help. And you put it, you have a really good program with the School of Unplugging unplugging and all the resources that are available to myself. And again, I don't think I use it enough or
Thanks,
as
man.
I should.
Appreciate it.
So thanks again, man.
Cheers, bud.
Yeah.
All right. So that's JF. He's one of the members of my School of Unplugging. You can find the QR code on the top left of your screen, scan that, and get started there. By the way, I've got 3 communities. I got one called the School of Unplugging, which is just, it's basic stuff. It's very low cost. The barrier to entry is basically the cost of a coffee per day. And you get access to me, a community of a few hundred other guys, really, really well organized content on stuff like, how do you plan to have kids and not get fucked? How do you untie the knot and do it in a responsible way that minimizes the damage? How do you make life-changing money? Stuff like that. I've got another school called the School of Entrepreneurship, which teaches you how to make money in your own business. And I've also got another community called the 1%, which is the top shelf, which you have to apply for. You can see all those by scanning the QR code on the top left, or just visit my website at richcooper.ca. Let's see what Craig's got for us here. Craig, what's up, buddy?
Hey, how you going? Yeah, a lot of it's accountability, I believe. Like, there's no real accountability. There's too much champion of this online social media stuff like that. It's just pushing, we're championing, women on OnlyFans and all that sort of stuff, and they're
Right.
big streamers and all that sort of stuff. But there's no accountability or any of it. Like, then you have these porn stars and the like, I want my stuff removed because of my children. Well, you didn't think about the actions of your consequences, but us as men, we're constantly jammed with all the consequences, or even the consequences of the women that we're with. Like, I've been through a divorce, I've got kids, I've got a pretty good relationship with my ex, which I developed and worked on after leaving, because I chose to leave. But, her lawyers still, because I'm the man and I earned a significant amount of money in comparison, still tried to take me for everything. The house I built, took it all sort of stuff, super, I'm not sure what you call it in Canada, but, your retirement money. They wanted to take a big chunk of that, that big portion of my work life that I wasn't even with anyone at that time. Like, it's all the accountability is put on us as the men and the role models, and then it's all championed, that your woman power and all this sort of stuff, but there's no accountability for whenever they mess up. It's okay, you're just a girl, you didn't mean it, or whatever else. I've got daughters, I don't let any of that fly with them, but then I'm fighting an uphill battle with my ex who just lets them have whatever they want. So you asked a 4-year-old, what does dad say? No. Because I had to move with my parents, because you don't have much option once you divorce, unless you earn a very, very significant amount of money. What's Nan say? No. What's mum say? Yes. So a 4-year-old telling, someone that I can get what I want from my mum, because it's ingrained in them constantly. We'll give you what you want because you're a girl. We'll give you this, we'll give you that. Oh, you're a boy. No, you have to work for that. So, and until such time as there's an allowance of actual accountability of what's going on, it's not going to change. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah, and there's no change in that area anywhere whatsoever. I fully agree with your observations. There's nothing that I don't co-sign there.
I see it's getting worse, to tell you the truth. Like, I've seen it in work now. My company's, bringing in 50% minimum female.
Rates dropping so dramatically is because guys are talking to one another. We're sharing these stories and we're just getting fed up with it, right? So that separates the sexes. It doesn't bring us together. It doesn't encourage us to form families, because why would you want to invite a woman into your house that can take half your shit and rob your children from you? And then
it's exactly the same thing I said to people.
You just look at her the wrong way.
Yeah, I nearly lost my job because a girl didn't like me and said that I'd told her to shut up or something, and I got dragged right over the coals. When I asked what happened, it was like, oh, well, we're going to say that you did this, but we won't, you don't lose your job this time, but, don't do it again. And I was like, but I didn't do it. It doesn't matter. They've said that they did it. You did it, so you did it.
Right. Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. I just don't see a solution unless there's, like, honestly, dude, it's at the point where I hate to say it, but we need the fucking like a small meteor to really knock the shit out of the planet to like wake everybody up and we get a bit of a restart. It's like, you know, I posted this on social media a couple months ago. I said there's two ways out of this problem. You know, one of them is going to be blood in the seas, you know, war. There's going to be lots and lots of problems. The other way is just saying no to women more.
I 100% agree.
Say no to women more.
I actually said that probably a little while ago before the Ukraine thing. I said we need a war because all of a sudden, once a war comes, all the feminism goes out the window. You know, you want the equality and all that sort of stuff without the responsibility that comes with it. And unless there's a massive war where it starts dragging everyone into it and all that sort of stuff, I don't think it will ever get better. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah. How old are you now?
Me, I'm 40.
Well, welcome to your 40s, brother.
Yeah, I'm 41 this year, but yeah, I turned 40 and came into it a bit differently. So yeah, but I went through all the processes similar to what you're talking about. You know, you build up your careers and everything else, house, kids, the lot, and then you know it just got to those things where it's like, oh, you know, respect women, or you got to do what they. I'm like, no, I don't cope with I don't deal with that sort of stuff. That's not how this works. And in the end, I was like, nah, this ain't working like this. I'm done. I'd rather be a separate parent and then constantly show the kids that this is acceptable behavior. And that's exactly what I said. Like, this is unacceptable behavior, and the way this is going isn't going in a good fashion for the kids to have good role models. So I left to be a better role model to my children than for anything else. I didn't care about the money. I was willing to give everything up. Her lawyer just wanted more.
How old are the kids?
Oldest is 13, then 10, then 4.
Yeah.
All girls too.
Tough years.
All girls. Sorry?
You get in some tough years with them, but you know, you stand your ground. You know, you set the example yourself. And there's going to be some days where it's just going to be, you know, you shaking your head, wondering how tomorrow is going to look, but just plow on through, man.
Well, that's pretty much how it's sort of been. Like, you know, I came across your book, got the audio version, got both audio versions. You know, there was a comparison between the two. Waiting for your next audio version because I'm on the road a lot, so I listen to books rather than read them.
You'll be out
so you know, like that was sort of a great help with that. Joined your school of unplugging before you change it to the entrepreneur, which I'm still an entrepreneur, but I just don't get it enough. Obviously, time difference makes a big thing with those classes and stuff. Being in Australia is a massive time difference for you guys. But yeah, it's just showing that, you know, even my middle child saying, I want to be a YouTuber. And I was, for me, I'm like, that's no life to aspire to, you know, and seeing what they're watching or looking at, and those kids that are doing stupid stuff on the internet. Like, yeah, we used to do some silly stuff, but we weren't doing it for views. We were having fun when we did stuff when we were younger. You know, I still remember before the internet. It does show the age, I guess. Yeah, and they were the golden years, just before or just as it was coming in. You could do a lot of stuff, but you know, you weren't fearing for anything because you know it's going to get plastered or your name's going to get tarnished massively because someone's put together a clip to make you look worse than what you actually are. You know, and the more that we sort of, you know, champion these sort of, you know, derogatory sort of behavior of these young people online in these streams and new stream places come out, I think it's just going to continue to get worse.
The thing about children when they want to become a YouTuber, when boys do it, they often don't think about the notion of educating it. Like, nobody really knows shit until they get older. Like, until you're 40, 50 years old. And even still, like, every day I'm still learning stuff. So I don't proclaim to be the guru on everything, but they do it because they want to get eyeballs and because they want to be popular, because they see that everybody looks at these streamers. Like, there's a contingent of these young men now, and they do all these walk around streaming things, and they're fucking retards. You know, they tell their audience to take meth, you know, they're 20 years old, take testosterone, smash your face with a hammer, and they do all this stuff for views because they think it's entertaining, and it is, because kids are watching it. And that's who they're following. Like, that's what they're looking to try to do. I got into this by accident. I got into this because I started sticking my GoPro to my windshield when I was going to the office, when I was doing an earn-out buyout with my brother at the debt settlement company. I didn't aim to be a fucking YouTuber.
But your example of being YouTubing and helping communities is a totally different type of YouTube versus I don't even know half of these blokes' names. I guess if you want to look at some of the guys that were around Andrew at the time, like Sneeko and all that, or that just go down. Oh, I'm famous all of a sudden. The Neon, whatever his name is, I don't even care about that. But they're just the pure stupidity of it. I laughed when I heard one of them got bashed or whatever. It's like, well, there you go. There's some accountability. Don't go and starting trouble. That's not what it's about. But there's people like yourself, the Rolos and all that actually try to help a community out to improve themselves. I 100% agree with those type of things. There's comedy and that, but what these kids are doing is more harmful than it is, satire or comedy or improvement or health or helping someone. And that's the problem with it all.
100%. Yeah, man. Thanks. Appreciate you calling in and sharing some of that experience.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Rich. Thanks for your help.
Wahlberg, I'll get to you in just 1 second over here. I just wanted to take a quick look at some of these comments. I thought I saw something here I wanted to talk about. No, I should have pinned it. Guys, if you want to get my attention on something, just throw it as a super chat and it'll go into the starred folder for me a lot easier. What's up, man?
Hey, brother. Yeah, just, the whole thing with feminism is it's essentially, from my experience, it's put a governor on manliness, essentially. So guys are running around with this little governor holding themselves back in regards to being a man, too afraid to stir up some problems. We need to take off that governor and let it fly. I've got a saying that it's better to have to pull on the reins than put a foot in the ass. So let it fly, let it go. Say the things that come to your mind and see what happens, because men generally are just running around just a little bit scared to say the exact thing that they want to say. And you got to let it go. And if you do, good things will happen. Bad shit will happen too. Believe me, I've run into it, but good things will happen. Even in the court system, I've been in the court system, as you well know, for over a half decade in regards to dealing with my son from a previous relationship. Well, because of my experience, the last time I was in there, I came prepared, ready. And you can actually express how you feel in court, in family court, that you can express. So me knowing that, you can say, this is what I feel about how I need to have my son with me. And you can express those things with passion. And so when I did this in this last case, I really came out ahead. And of course, the other party said, oh, well, this isn't fair. Well, the judge responded, saying, madam, this is not a court of fairness. This is a court of justice. So you have to let the governor off, so then other people will respond to you in the right way. You've got to stop pussying around and being scared of everything.
I agree. And if more men adopt that notion, a lot of this will heal itself. Let me just let you go, because I want to deal with a comment here in the chat and just prove a point. But thanks for dropping that one, man. So there was so I just pulled it up here on the side here. Who is this? That is. So Lisa here said, I'm crying. Not all women hate men. Stop it. Okay. And we're not saying that all women hate men, but let me just share something with you that I bookmarked here on my folder. So Steve Bartlett here, he's talking to this chick. It's a 3-minute clip. And basically, I'll just read out the context. I'm not going to play it here, but Steve says, why are 31% of young men sexually inactive, almost doubled in the last 18 years? Why are men 80% of suicides? Many feeling hopeless and purposelessness, rudderlessness, if you can put it that way. And Erica says, we've taken away their purpose. Men once protected, provided, hunted, clear roles. Raising women was positive, but the modern feminist push often turned vengeful, diminish men, push them out. Now 60% of university grad schools are women. Men marry at or below their level, women only at or above. Result, men feel discouraged, purposeless, diminished. This 3-minute clip is a stark look at how role reversal and imbalance is hurting men deeply. I don't think I need to play it, but the point of this was, I said, read the comments and you'll see how Western women truly feel about men. And I think I hearted some of these over here, so I should be able to get to them real quickly. So this one over here, when you blame feminism as the core of men's struggle, you're saying that men can only have purpose if women are to be their property, if they have no rights and are not considered humans. Maybe the problem isn't feminists, but this needs to have women as lesser. This is actually a dude that wrote. I think it's a dude. It's a dude. He's a plugged-in simp, loser, right? There's another one over here. Patriarchy hurts men too. Women will volunteer, make friends, have hobbies, and build community based on caring for one another, while men are being red-pilled to use and abuse. Don't be shocked they're miserable. Another dork that doesn't know what they're talking about. This gal over here said, could it be because men and menfluencers? No, it's women, right? Sarcasm. This gal over here said, we've taken away their purpose. Raising women was demonized. Please sit down and shut up while actual history comes to the front of the class to show you what men raising women when they have unchecked authority look like, and still does in Muslim countries. And of course, they cite the worst of, the possibilities. They don't talk about what's behind any of this. Like, did any of these women deserve to get locked up like this? What did they do, to be put in this position, right? It's just, oh, men are oppressive and fuck you guys and sit down and shut up all the time. Ellie over here, this gal says, we've taken away their purpose. Purpose comes from within. It's not the fault of women's rights if men are struggling to find meaning in the modern world. Human adaptability is about finding a niche and filling it, not demanding an artificial. You know what? Let's just play this clip over here. It's 3 minutes. It's not going to take too long.
Earlier on that said there's been increased sexual inactivity amongst young men, which is an interesting stat. It's risen to almost 31% of men between the ages of 18 and 24 reporting no sexual activity in the past year. So that's almost doubled in about the space of 18 years.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting stat. High suicide rates amongst men. Men account for nearly 80% of all suicides in the US. The highest rate observed among 45 to 64-year-olds globally. Suicide is the leading cause of death amongst young men. And a survey conducted in the UK found that an increasing amount of men feel hopeless and worthless, and that are struggling with finding meaning and purpose in the world. The plight of young men. You talk in your books and in your work about how the role of a man has changed and how that this might not be necessarily productive for the health and well-being of a man.
Yeah. We've taken away their purpose. When you take a human being's purpose away, remember the purpose for men was to protect their family, it was to hunt in the old days, feed their families, but it was also to protect their families. It was to provide for their families. And what we've done in reversing everything is, although we raised up women, and there are certainly positive things about raising up women, but when we raised up women, we denigrated men. And I have 2 sons, so this is very personal for me. And I also see a lot of young men in my practice, young adult men. And what I'll say is that they feel discouraged, they feel purposeless, they feel diminished. Yeah. And there has been something vengeful, I think, about, so the feminist movement was meant to give women choice and to balance off what was imbalanced in society. But there's something vengeful about it. I think at moments I feel like there's something vengeful about the modern feminist movement, which is, let's get them, let's diminish them, let's take over, let's push them out, let's beat them up, let's get, let's show them something really vengeful. So so for me, the feminist movement was meant to create balance. It wasn't meant to set into play this other kind of imbalance. And more than, I think 60% of universities are women now, as well as graduate schools. And so that means, and the studies show that men will marry at their educational level or below. Women will only marry at their educational level or above. And by diminishing men so much in terms of our education and professions, we basically taken men's purpose away. They feel purposeless.
Yeah, I've said for a while, there's a lot of rudderless men out there. And what she said to the point is that toxic feminism, and people don't use this term enough. I've coined toxic feminism. You can go back to the OG shit that I've been talking about for years. You're going to see it more and more on social media. So use that term, toxic feminism. Toxic feminism is telling women that they have to punish men, that they should never do anything for the express pleasure of a man. Don't make him a sandwich. Don't make him a nice meal. You have to serve women. You have to get down and become less so that they can become more. That's the narrative of toxic feminism. And that's why your fertility rates, to the point of the title of this video, are in the toilet in the West. Because all that's left is a bunch of pussified males and then a bunch of top shelf guys that are left over that are basically indulging in most of the women, right? 85% of women on dating apps swipe right on like the top 10% of guys. That's just the way things are all going. It's upside down, man. Toxic feminism hates men. And all you got to do is read the comments on any kind of, social media post like that. And it's the same thing. Shut the fuck up, men. You've had your time. Now it's our time. It's the sisterhood, blah, blah, blah. Don't be a bunch of pussies. Figure it out. It's the same thing, right? Over and over again. Nobody gives a fuck about men. That's just the way things have always been. But now it's to the point where it's like they want to punish men, right? Like they want to destroy. That's why you get the Me Too movement. It's like I had a cop on once, and he investigated rape allegations for decades. And he told me straight up, he goes, 85% of the time they were false. They were women cheating on their fucking husbands or boyfriends. And they went to the police department in advance proactively to claim rape so that when they got caught, they didn't look bad and they could just play innocent and shit, right? Because we've given women so much power now. And it's not to say that women don't get mistreated, but when you end up in situations where when they investigate these things and 85% of the times is fucking bullshit, that's why you get guys that are like, yeah, I'm just not playing the game anymore. I get it. I totally get it. See what David's got for us here. David, what's up, buddy? David, you got to unmute yourself, man. You're just muted yourself after you unmute yourself. You got 2 seconds. I got to let you go if you can't figure that part out, bro. Okay. Come back if you can figure it out. Guys, it's real simple to get in on these calls. Just click the call-in link, and then you don't even have to have your camera on. I could just pull you in now without any video. Let's just drop the link again. Call in and ask a question. There you go. It's in all the chat. Lisa, don't apologize. Just like anybody watching this, like there's some fantastic women out there. The problem is that the vast majority of the narrative happens to be fuck men. We got to teach them a lesson. They're all oppressive. They're evil. We have to take away their rights. Like I see stuff on social media all the time where it's like, there's a tweet and a chick's like, men should start out life in jail and only be let out on good behavior. Could you imagine if I went on Twitter today and I said, all women should start life in jail and they should only be let out on good behavior? You get swarmed by the fucking world. They would just lose they would just lose their shit. But when a chick does it, it's totally acceptable to disparage men. And that's the problem, right? It's now become acceptable with toxic feminism in its form as it's evolved over the last several decades. It's become a hate movement. It's become a supremacy movement. And its aim, again, is to punish men. I wrote about this in 2019 in my first book, in the very first edition. The first chapter in this book is establishing the notion that we live in a female-first primary social order. Okay, this was fucking 6-7 years ago, probably 8 years ago that I started writing this. I didn't publish it until 2019. That's the first chapter of the book. The female primary social order. That's the world that we live in today. And it's just gotten worse. It's not gotten any better. That's the Unplugged Alpha, by the way. You can get that on Amazon. Get the second edition because that's the updated version. But you get the point, right? Let me see if I can. I skipped over a couple of chats that I wanted to pop. Guys, if you want my attention on the chats, the easiest way to do this is just to super chat it, and I'll get it started and I can find it. Elizabeth here says, at its core, feminism is strictly gender equality, equal pay, freedom from harassment, and stereotyping. It's toxic when feminism becomes anti-men or when it's used to avoid accountability, which it has been used. I don't think anybody would debate that. I think we need to be mindful of defining feminism around the bad actors. Men are vital partners, women who forget this lack of respect needed for business and personal success. Look, the vast majority of the feminist narrative that's used today is hostile. It's not about equal pay or equal rights. Women have had equal pay and equal rights for a long fucking time. For decades, a long time, before I was even born. You know, the notion that there's some oppressive force holding women back is just nonsense. And I get that that's going to encourage women to, you know, you don't need a man, go and enter the workforce, make money, have your own job, pay your own bills, buy your own house, have your own cars and stuff like that. And how's that working out, ladies? How is that working out, right? Like the pool gets smaller and smaller for you. And as you get older and older, and as your value starts to go down because your value is based on your beauty and your purity, women are beauty objects, men are success objects. Women want to be with a success object. And this whole cultural shift, it's ruined men too. I'll be absolutely honest with you. The vast majority of men are plugged in betas. I'm fully aware that women are not attracted to the vast majority of men. They're just not a plausible option for many women. And I think that's one of the reasons why the divorce rate is also so high too, is that, you know, I talk about this in my second book, Top Shelf Man. One of the reasons why the divorce rates today are so high is because women aren't getting their first choice. They're just not. And they're forced to settle. And they settle for something that's less than ideal. And what do? A few years down the road, fuck this guy, I don't like him anymore. You hear nothing online about, you know, the best sex marriages ever. All you hear about is sexless marriages all the time. There's literal communities and groups and Facebook discussion boards and Reddit threads for dead bedrooms because people aren't banging in marriages, which is one of the primary reasons why they get married, is to have, you know, frequent access to tons of sex, right? That's one of the main reasons why guys do anyway. And then they end up in sexless marriages, right? Because she just doesn't dig his vibe. She never really digged his vibe. He was just like, you know, she's 34. She wanted to have kids. He was good enough. He had a good enough job. He was from an okay family with good enough, you know, morals or beliefs or whatever that's somewhat aligned. So she said, you know, are you going to shit or get off the pot? You know how many times I've heard this story from guys? Well, she told me to shit or get off the pot. Guys, if you ever hear shit or get off the pot, just get off the pot. Just don't force yourself in a situation like that. Like if it's not obvious that she's a good fit, if she doesn't want to wait a couple of years to be vetted properly, you know, if she's not going to follow your lead, just get off the pot. Don't shit. You get the point though, right? Anyway, I think I can wrap it up on that note. It's been a couple hours. We've had some good call-ins, as I suspected with the summaries with all of these reports and studies that the Western states have put out. It's all the same shit. It all concludes the exact same thing. The birth rates are declining because women aren't having children because they're doing other things instead of having families. And what is it? Getting jobs, getting degrees, getting student debt, climbing the corporate ladder, traveling Europe, traveling whatever, fucking around. What happened in Vegas stays in Vegas, racking up their notch counts, doing OnlyFans, doing everything but have a family and have children because they've been told to do everything but have a family and have children. And even if you find a gal who's like, I'm 21 and I want to have a family and have children, you're still doing it in an environment that hates men, because the entire ecosystem, the entire legal system, the entire family law system, everything is built around toxic feminist narratives. You get divorced? Fuck you. You're lucky if you get to see your kids. And if you do, you have to fight for it. Like you heard from some of the call-ins, tonight. Many guys end up in that position. Not all, but the vast majority of guys end up in that position. There's some situations where women end up in that position and they really don't fucking like it either. They really hate it. There's a bunch of stories out there about Halle Berry, the actress, who's complaining that she has to pay alimony and child support to her ex because he was a lower income earner. And that's how family law punishes the higher income earner, which most women marry up. Anyway, you've heard all the stories over and over and over again. It's like, let's try to enjoy our lives and enjoy the decline as much as possible. I still believe that men and women are better together than they are apart. With that being said, you just can't march into the slaughterhouse and just hope for the fucking best. There's a lot of sharp objects in there that are very damaging. And I think guys would be wise to read my books and evaluate what it is that they're doing and who they're doing it with. And that's an unfortunate reality of today's world. Guys legitimately have to do a lot of fucking work and go through a ton of steps before if they're lucky enough to find a chick that wants to have kids, before they invite a chick into their life to have children with, because the environment we live in sucks. 50% of marriages end in divorce. In the study I talk about in my first book, Aaron and Civido, after 8.5 years, less than 12% of people are still in love. Less than 3% are in a state of bliss. Marriage doesn't really work that fucking well. In fact, it's kind of broken and it sucks. So even if you do get to that point, guys, where you can enter into that union and hopefully have a family, you're still taking on a tremendous amount of risk. Thanks for the super chat. Rich, in today's world, though, one salary can't cut it for a family. Women has to go out and work anyways, with family or without it. Economy has changed. I mean, that's what the state did to you. That's what the government did to you, is they printed so much fucking money. They've inflated it. Dollars have no values. Everything costs a lot more. You don't get paid that much more. And that's the argument, is you have to have double income, right? A lot of the times there's DINKs. It's an acronym for double income, no kids, because they can't afford kids. But there was a time, in my grandfather's generation where one income could support a family of 4. In my great-grandfather's generation, one income could support a family of fucking 9, right? My great-great-grandfather's generation was 16, right? So it's not that you can't support a family. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that if I wanted to have a family of 9 kids right now, I could go and pay for the whole fucking thing and keep her home. I wouldn't do it with one chick, but I could do that entire process, right? But there's not a lot of guys that are in that position that have adapted to the modern economy. So you're absolutely right. Vast majority of guys are kind of in a fucking, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And, you got to buy the house. You got to have the wedding. You got to have a big fucking wedding cake. You need to have the nice invitations with the crystals on it and the fucking fluffy purple shit that she wants and all this sort of stuff. And that chews through a lot of money. Everything's about robbing you of your wealth. Taxes keep going up. They rob you of your wealth. The notion of an engagement ring, that little diamond, that whole, like the whole diamond industry. I don't know if you ever heard the story about that, but they cooked up the idea to sell men diamonds to give them to women. It was a whole marketing ploy. None of it's real. It's all bullshit. It's all big made up ass story. And they convinced women that it was true, that you had to be given a diamond of some value, that it had to be expensive. It had to be pure and clear and sparkle exactly. It had to have the right fire. And then guys were convinced to go and spend 3 months of their salary on that diamond. I think at first it was like 1 month. And then they changed the narrative. Like, you know, they thought to themselves, well, we convinced so many of these fucking retards to spend 1 month of their salary on a diamond to get engaged. Let's tell them it should be 3 months now. And then the entire marketing portfolio changed completely. And they said, now you got to spend 3 months of your salary on a piece of dinosaur shit that sparkles when it's polished properly. That's all that it is. It doesn't really have any inherent value. Aside from tips and like drills, that's really it. It doesn't have much value. It's not like gold or silver where it's used in like, you know, solar panels and shit like that. It's just dinosaur shit that women stick on their finger and they go, look, it's fucking pretty. Look at it. It's so nice. He engaged to me and he got down on his knee, and they have a whole fucking story about it all. And they enslave men. It's a humiliation ritual. But, you know, to this gentleman's point, yeah, that's where you are today, because your governments that everybody keeps voting for, let's vote for bigger government with more fucking people running it, and they hire more people and more taxes and more social programs, because all the dummies out there keep voting for the stupidity, and you end up in a situation just like this guy's talking about over here. It's very hard to have a family without 2 incomes now. I understand that. I completely understand that. I empathize with that. It's fucking tough, man. It's really tough out there, but it is what it is. Anyway, had fun chopping it up with you guys tonight. Hope you got some value out of the show. Do all the stuff in the comments. And please, the greatest compliment that you could give me is just invite somebody to check out these series. Give them a copy of the book. If you haven't bought the book, get a copy. If you've enjoyed the videos, if you've enjoyed my books and my content, why don't you join the School of Unplugging? Like I said, it's like the cost of a coffee a day, essentially. You sign up for the annual membership. I think it's a 46% savings. Just go to the links below after I end this video and you'll find it all there, or scan the QR code on the top left. We'll see you guys later. All right, guys, if you enjoyed that podcast, make sure you visit my website at richcooper.ca to learn more about my courses, my book, The Unplugged Alpha, community, or booking me for private coaching. Also, if you are a Canadian with $15,000 or more of credit card debt and what you are doing right now isn't paying off the balances, then visit totaldebtfreedom.ca and hit get a free quote to see if you qualify to settle your credit card debt for less than you owe today over the next 48 months. Make sure you check out the top pinned comment on YouTube for all the links mentioned during the show. Peace.